morning. Today is hump day.
Uh-oh.
But we're not going to talk about hump day today. We're going to talk about Friday. Do you know, Kathryn, why Friday is always better than the weekend?
I don't, but I have a feeling you're going to tell me.
Because the next day is always Saturday.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness.
You can tell that one to Sam.
Oh, he will love it. Yep. He will love it.
Good morning, beautiful, smiling people. Good morning. Good morning, Daily Huddlers. Welcome to Wednesdays on the Daily Huddle, where I'm here with my co-host, Kathryn Sabol, and we talk everything communication and relationships because we know that more effective communication builds better relationships, and better relationships builds better marriages, better families, better communities, and better business. Today, we are going to talk about how to navigate sensitive conversation. So I can't wait to dig into this. But before I do, let's set a few intentions. Let me start with the beautiful Andrea. So happy to see you. As always, you're so faithful. Tell me, I want to know this morning, how are you and what are you grateful for?
Tara, I am the way I say I am. So I went to the wheel of feelings and chose this word. I am optimistic. That's how I am today, and that's the way I say I am. And I'm grateful actually for the wheel of feelings. It helps me every day to wake up and choose a word, and that's how I'm going to feel. So I'm thankful for that tool.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I'll have to check that out. All right. Well, I wonder if Cece can talk to us this morning. I saw her in the chat. So I would love to give a shot to hear from Cece and tell us, Cece, where are you and who will you hug today?
Good morning. My name is Cece and I'm here right now. And I'm going to hug somebody today. I just don't know who. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you for chiming in, Cece. I always love your spirit. And let me talk to my treasured friend, Sorrel. Tell us, Sorrel, I want to know, what time is it? And I also want to know, how are you?
Good morning, Tara. Good morning, everyone. The time is now. And in this moment, and in every moment that follows, I am the way I say I am. And I am powerful, loving, and compassionate. That's who I am.
I know you are. I feel that. Thank you so much, Sorrel. All right. Without any further ado, thank you all for helping us to set an intention this morning. And I'm going to turn it over to Kathryn Sabol, my co-host, because she has a lot to share around our topic, which is how to navigate sensitive conversations. This is going to be juicy. Kathryn, talk to us this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Well, this topic came about with one of our guests who came on the show, I believe it was last week. And in our pre-meeting for the show, he was just sort of asking me a little bit about myself. And I think, Tara, that I mentioned that our connection is because we both have children with special needs. And he asked me, tell me about your son with special needs, if you don't mind sharing. And I lit up, and people don't often ask that because they feel uncomfortable around it. And so, but I lit up. And then after the fact, I realized how much I enjoyed sharing about my son, even under the context of the fact that he has special needs. I shared his wins, his joys, gave sort of an overview. And afterwards, it was like, wow, people don't really ask me that a lot, especially that directly. And it got me thinking. And then, of course, you and I, Tara, had a conversation about, why is it that we don't just ask? What is it about these sensitive topics that keeps us either uncomfortable or dancing around it or not just asking the question? And a few months ago, my son came home from third grade. He was in third grade at the time, and he came home with this book. And it's called Just Ask. And I actually, so we read it several times at night, and it's about all different kids with all different abilities, from cerebral palsy to autism to Tourette's to blind, deaf. And the whole premise is, if you have a question about me and what makes me unique, just ask me. So this is where the juicy conversation starts. So Tara, come in here and talk with me about this, because you also have a child with special needs. And so we've been talking about this, and what is it about these sensitive conversations? Why this is important is because what happens in a conversation when somebody is not being honest and not being truthful, in other words, somebody's curious about my son with special needs and they start dancing around that topic, but not asking the direct question, it has an impact.
Absolutely. You know, I can share a different experience around my daughter with special needs. And I think that this is why people are anxious around these conversations, because they don't want to end up doing what was said to me about 3 months ago. We took Caroline, my husband, Mike, and I took Caroline to do a kayak tour down the river here in Augusta. And so we go and we get in the kayak, and, you know, we're trying to work everything out with Caroline and all her issues and ordeals. And we go on the river and we get back, and we're giving the kayaks back. And it's just a simple procedure. And the guy looks at me and he goes, "What's wrong with her? What happened?"
Oh, Lord. Oh, my goodness.
I was so floored. He's like, what's wrong?
Oh, my gosh.
Sorry, I can't say it without still laughing. If I were more of a sensitive person, I probably would have said, you know, something rude, but I wonder if that's why we're afraid to navigate these conversations, because we don't want to come across like this dingbat.
What's wrong with her? It's more like, what's wrong with you?
Exactly.
Yes, I think you're right. And we don't want to do what the opposite of that person would do, which is be sensitive and offend.
Mm-hmm.
Ask
Yeah.
a question without intention of offending, but then ultimately, you know, upsetting you. Wow, that's really interesting. That could take us down a couple of different paths.
But, you know, so then we get back to, you know, why don't we just ask people, like, why didn't he say, you know, would you mind sharing, you know, a little bit more about your daughter? I can see that she's unique, or something like that. And I think that, I always lean on the science of this. It causes us to feel a lot of angst and stress to navigate a conversation that's not comfortable. For me, though, and I wonder if anyone can relate to this, there's another piece to it. And so I'll share another experience. And this takes me years and years ago, when Caroline first got sick, and our life, we were living in trauma. I mean, day in and day out, navigating seizures and medications and doctors, and just the massive disappointment of watching her brain deteriorate, and the trauma around her friends leaving her. It was horrible. And I would get up every day, put on my suit, put on my lipstick, get in the car, and I'd drive out to my accounts. I had a sales job and business, and my customers were my friends. So every account that I walked into, you know, I hadn't seen the folks in, 4 or 5 weeks. They would want to pull me into their office, sit down, and, please tell me about Caroline. And they did it with so much love and so much care. But what happened is, I tried to have reprieve from the trauma by going to work and just being Tara, the salesperson, the lady that gives the presentations, and not Tara, the mom in trauma. The people didn't know that, though. Mm-hmm. And so eventually I ended up selling my business because I felt like I couldn't breathe. And the minute I sold that business and walked away from it, I didn't realize how much that was really, really bothering me. So all that sharing is to say this: I'm sensitive to ask people, will you tell me about, your son or an accident or something that's sensitive, because I don't want to do to them what was done to me unknowingly. I don't want to just put all this extra weight and stress on them when all they really need is to step away. So I tend to say to people, would you like to talk about this, or would you prefer not to? I can understand either way. And I usually get the response when I say that, I get a response, something to the effect of, I don't mind talking about it. So that tells me that they're uncomfortable too. That doesn't really tell me if you want to, if you feel like you want to share, or maybe you want a reprieve from it. So for me, that's a lot of what I do is, do you want to talk about it? Or sometimes you just want a reprieve, and then people will, I don't know. What do you think, Kathryn?
Well, I think, when we boil this down, it all comes back to the connection, because there's a couple of things, right? It also goes to your intention. The guy who said, "What's wrong with her?" Like it's that sort of, morbid curiosity. He was just curious. He just wanted to know. There was real, no love behind it, no curiosity. It was just sort of like, wanted to know.
Nosy. Yep.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Part of the reason we're talking about it is because what we know is that when we aren't being authentic and truthful, then we are cutting off a connection to another human. So I go towards what creates the deepest connection with this person. And what you're saying sounds like your way is, I'd like to open up the space here to connect with the person and give them the range of their comfort level, meaning I want to connect with you. And that means we can talk, or we don't have to talk, but we can still connect. So I think that's beautiful, because it gives them the space to step into whichever lane they'd like to in that moment, versus you determining that in order for us to connect, I need to ask you this specific question and you feel compelled to answer. Does that make sense? So it opens the conversation in the relationship where people have more freedom to be where they are in that moment.
Yeah, I as you're sharing this, you know what this makes me think of a little bit is Dr. Agondo and her, like, check yourself. And
Right.
the reason why I bring that up, though, is before we ask somebody something that might feel like an interrogation or nosy, or however you want to say it, maybe we should ask ourselves why we're asking. Are we just curious, or do we care? Do we want to take an interest?
Well, because I think that's felt too. I do think because that guy, where he was coming from or where he wasn't coming from, and where this all started when, Robert asked me about my son, it was true connection, wanting to get to know me, learn more about my son. I felt that. If it was more like, so tell me, what is it about this son of yours? Again, with just morbid curiosity, I would have been way less interested, but I knew he was learning about him through the process. He was asking questions. He was getting to know Michael in that conversation. And that was deep human connection.
Yeah. And you had the space and the energy to share it in that moment. And sometimes we don't. And that's where I think, rather than, I think sometimes the tendency is, well, someone asked me, but it's none of their business, so they just lie. And I hate to do that, because then to me, then you're just causing yourself more stress. You don't feel good about being the person that you want to be. But it just takes a moment to catch our breath and say, I appreciate you asking. It's not anything I want to get into right now. And just, owning that.
Right. And the lie part, let's just focus there for just a second, because it could be what a lot of people consider white lies. I'm fine, even though I'm totally not fine, or it's all good. That situation with Caroline, it's fine. No, it's not fine. I mean, by anybody's definition, in that moment when you felt that way. And so I think looking at that, because you always talk about being really transparent and just being really authentic in the moment. And that's what stops the connection. Again, it's felt in the room. People don't know this. So my son came in from school the other day and he went straight into the playroom, beeline. I'll be right back. I'm going to the playroom. Are you? What you doing over there? Like his behavior, his demeanor, and his tone were all screaming, I'm doing something I should not be doing. So I get up and I follow him in there. Of course, I found out what he was doing. He had taken something from school that he shouldn't have. My point about that is super easy to see in a 9-year-old. Their behavior, their voice, because they're not skilled enough to do all this. We grow up, we get skilled to try and create all of this fluff, if you will, away from the direct truth of what's happening. And we think we're fooling people. We think when we show up and we put on a pretty face or put on a smile, people won't notice. But what we don't realize, and this is what you can talk to, is that we take in, 10,000 pieces of information every second. And we are synthesizing that. So all behind the scenes, we are determining what's happening with this conversation, in this relationship, in this space, If you walk into a room and somebody's just had a huge argument and they're standing staring at each other, you know that without a word spoken.
Yes.
So you think you're fooling somebody by saying the white lie, but you're really just cutting off a connection to another human being.
So tell me then, if someone, let's just make this like super real life. You know, we're walking into a meeting and we're a few minutes early, and maybe it's even virtual, and someone does say, you know, how is your son's therapy going? And maybe it's not going well. How do you navigate that conversation and not, you know, kind of usurp the energy from the room?
Well, I think that's a great question. And that's where you are brilliant at figuring out how do I be truthful and authentic in that moment. I think what you said is great. You know, everyone's going to have to figure out what that is for them in the moment. As truthful as one can be and true to themselves, that's going to keep the energy from being sucked out of the room. Do you know what I mean? Like, so again, it's still pointing to just being myself. And if it weren't going well, I mean, I could say something as easy as, whew, it's been a doozy this week. Oh God, don't take me there, because we aren't ever going to come back from that one. You know, there's a way you can use humor if that fits. Try and just say, hey, because that's clear. Like, it's not going well, but I haven't lied. And I also said, don't take us there because we won't come back from that. I don't want to talk about it. You know, that's truthful.
Yeah.
You could be super sincere and just use direct words, like you said, like, I don't really want to talk about it. Thank you so much for asking. I know you care, but whew, if I talk about it, you might see me cry, and I don't want to do that. My mascara can't run before this meeting, or, you know, so there's ways to do it where you're honest and also being true to yourself.
Right. You know, as I imagine you doing this, Kathryn, I'm imagining other people that I don't see. And we've all been there. We've all been like, oh yeah, everything's great when it's not. Or, you know, like I have a friend whose husband has cancer, and she's like, he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. And I'm thinking, it's got to be so rough. So what I think the message that I'm hearing from you, that I'm taking in, and hopefully for our listeners, is, and you said it, take the time to be truly honest and true to yourself, and worry less about the image that you want to project and more about connection. And to me, that's the gift of being yourself. Like, we can show up, everything's great, I have all the answers, I'm credible, but we don't build connection that way. That's not how we build truth. I heard, most people know who Simon Sinek is. I'm a big fan. And I heard him say this recently. Let me see if I can get this right. He said, we build trust more by asking for help than by offering it. Yes. And to me, I clearly have not forgotten when he said that, because that to me is focusing more on connection versus our image.
Right.
And in the entrepreneurial world, you know, we tend to worry about our image. You know, it's our pocketbook, but I think connections are our image.
Right. Well, and at the end of the day, if you have that connection, I mean, that's where the magic happens. We're talking about being in our bodies, being in connection versus being in our head. Like, I've got to get this done, or I've got to look this certain way. There's just something beautiful about connecting with another human on that level. And then you learn so much. I mean, you know, anyway, it's you and I both know, I know other people have had this experience. It is so where the magic happens, when you show up and you're true to yourself and you just say it. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Something left my mind. We've said this before. Don't be fooled if it feels uncomfortable. Because what often happens is we try this. Let's say I say the truth, and then it feels really uncomfortable. And in my mind, I start saying, oh God, I just totally took the air out of this room. Oh my God, that was awful. Now we're going to start this meeting. They're going to think terribly about me. That's how my mind will go sometimes. And that, to me, that's what happens when I step out of my comfort zone. I just stop myself and go, oh, that's just that part of me that's trying to keep me safe. None of that's true. I can feel uncomfortable, try something different, see if it works. I can even ask for feedback from those people. How did that land when I said that? Was that awkward? But don't let your mind run away and make it sound like that didn't work or that didn't land. So we've got.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you. You know, before we open it up for questions and comments, which I am excited to hear, I'd love for us to kind of recap this, because I think we're talking about two things in sensitive conversations. Some are when you are approaching a sensitive topic, like your friend who said, would you tell me about your special needs son? And some are when they're directed at you, when you're on the receiving end. So let's summarize where we think we can all elevate our communication skills in both of those topics. So if someone is asking you about something that's sensitive, what is the takeaway?
For me, it's say the truth and in the way that it feels appropriate at the time.
Awesome.
And let them have their own reaction. You're not responsible for how they respond.
Right. Thank you. That's super clear. I love that. And then how about the flip side of it? What if, so that's someone's asking you, what if you are taking an interest in somebody? What's that?
Just ask.
Yeah.
The thing that's similar to both, be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you're curious, say, hey, I'm really curious. I'm a little uncomfortable to ask, so you don't have to answer, but tell me about your son with special needs. I'm really curious.
Right.
Just ask and let them have their reaction. That's about them, not about you. Check your intention. That's the other thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love to ask people, do you feel like talking about this right now, or would you rather not? Like, give them the choice. So yeah. This is really helping me. So I don't know about anybody else. I'm going to give this some real thought as I dive into, I like to use the word juicy, but juicier conversations. That's what enriches our lives, not those surface. Oh, everything's great. So, but yeah, I would love to hear if anyone has any thoughts, comments, what popped up for you all.
Tom has a question.
Hello, Tara. Hello, Kathryn. Thank you. Yeah, my hand popped up. That was the first thing. So I was sitting here listening to you thinking, going back to Tara, you mentioned the check yourself, and hearing some of these anecdotes that you had mentioned, it seems like there's, a range of scenarios. You've got someone that you have an existing relationship with, and so therefore you can be that much more transparent with not a whole lot of checking. Then in other situations, you're probably going to be a little bit more thoughtful before you answer, maybe confirming where your boundaries are. You want to be, transparent and open. So I guess my question is, I just want to try to understand a little bit better that concept of checking yourself.
Oh, I think I work toward that a lot. So quite honestly, I don't remember the exact context that I said it in, but I know what's coming up for me as you're saying this. And I talk about this a lot, Tom, that there's a difference between privacy and vulnerability. They're not the same. And people say, well, how much is too much to tell? And I don't want to share this, or should I share that? First of all, Brene Brown talks about this a lot, about being vulnerable. You don't meet somebody and tell them your deepest, darkest secrets. There's seasons for that. But if someone asks you something that you don't want to share, that's where I take a breath and keep myself from saying something that's not true, and saying, I prefer not to get into it right now. And to me, that's being just as vulnerable as sharing something that you just don't want to, you don't want to share. I'm married to a German he's the opposite of asking questions. He asks me questions, but people we meet, he's like, you ask so many questions. I'm like, that's how I was raised. That's what I do. He doesn't. He just tells jokes.
Love it.
So is that helpful? I quite honestly, I can't remember exactly in what context I brought that up.
I think what's coming up for me is I think it was around the intention. Check yourself in terms of what is the intention that you have for connecting with this person, or is it just you want to know for some other reason? If it's, I'm curious about them, I want to know this.
Yeah, it's the intention. And then I think, Tara, as you're saying, recognizing the privacy versus vulnerability, because there's a boundary aspect.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of that. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Be true to yourself. Don't share more. You are not compelled to share something you don't want to share ever, period. You can still be vulnerable. It does not mean.
And truthful.
And truthful. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I just say what's on my mind, similar to what Tara said. It's like, I don't prefer to go through it right now. Sometimes I go through my thought process and go, gosh, I feel like answering you, but I feel like that might take me down a path. So give me 1 second. I don't think now's the time. So, because sometimes I don't have it all together in that moment, especially if it's out of the blue.
I love that. Yeah,
Thank you.
she's right. That's what I was referencing, and I couldn't remember that. But before we're just nosy or just, don't give things thought, just stop and say, is this appropriate right now? Does this feel loving? Does this feel like I'm going to project the person that I want to be? And if it's not, maybe we just don't get to know.
Yeah. And does this breed connection?
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Sorrel.
You guys always kill me on Wednesdays. Thank you. This conversation brings me to sharing my own situation. I grew up, and as an adolescent, I've always known my brother to have epilepsy, and his epilepsy, the medication, and all that stuff takes a toll on his body and the brain. And he's 57 now and still dealing with that. And my parents were both 89 and caring for him. So I think about that whole situation and I go, wow, mom and dad are like giants, they're 89 and they still, quote unquote, have a baby. And part of what I deal with is that I live in Atlanta, they live in Miami. So from time to time, I feel as if I'm not playing my part. Like I've left my 89-year-old parents alone with my brother. And the more I think about it in this conversation, the more I'm seeing maybe that the words sensitive is relative. Like I say to myself, this conversation is sensitive. And when I say that, then I don't open up about it. So perhaps what I'm taking away, perhaps how we can deal with that is that part of the checking myself is checking to see, am I making the conversation sensitive before I get into it? And maybe it is my own perception of how sensitive this conversation is that makes it even difficult for me and for the people I'm in the conversation with to engage and connect. So that's what I'm walking away with. Maybe, quote unquote, there's nothing sensitive unless I say it is.
We are the way we say we are. And in conversation, Sorrel, it's true. People will follow the energy we bring.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, is how do you want that conversation to go? And what energy do you bring? Is it sensitive? And is that what you bring? Or is there some other way that you want it to go? And then you get to create that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathryn. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Gosh, as usual, it's like, wow, there we are at the end of the Daily Huddle. It flies by. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. Thank you for the conversations here. This is, as she said, I always take away something from the conversation. So I hope that the rest of you did as well. We are going to close out, as we always do, with our 7 tenets. And I'm just going to say, I love all of you. I love this on Wednesdays. I just love coming in here. So share your love. It's so wonderful just to be in connection and see other people and meet them where they are. And you could share a plant-based meal with them too, because the world will appreciate it, and so will your body. And if you have a partner, you could go to sleep and they can sleep next to you, and you can all get your 7 hours and wake up feeling refreshed. So sleep, get your sleep. And stress less, laugh, stress less. Your body will so love it. And give of your time and your resources and your friendship and your smiles and your emotion wheels. Is that what it was, Andrea? Love that. And move your body, get out there, use it or lose it. See y'all tomorrow. Thanks for joining the Daily Huddle.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kathryn.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
See you guys. Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you,
Dan.
everyone. Bye
Bye,
now.